Hello, today I'm at St. Andrew's Church in Covehithe. This is an interesting church because at first glance it looks like it might have been an act of Henry VIII, but this one actually has a different story and it's quite an interesting one. And so I'll take you around the outside and we'll discuss what happened here. So this church was started in the 14th century to replace a church that was already on this site. The bell tower is 14th century with a bit of 15th century, and the walls are all 15th century. So it's not an old church by any means. So what happened here was that in the late 14th century, early 15th century, a local got together with a bunch of villagers and decided to build this huge church for a town that never got more than 300 people to live in it. And less than 100 years later, during the Civil War, Robert Dowsing came along and didn't like the stained glass windows. So he had all the stained glass windows broken out, and that was the start of the downfall of this church. About 50 years later, maybe a bit less, the local villagers who couldn't afford a giant church for their town asked for the roof to be torn off, and the church allowed it because there was no way that they could afford to upkeep the church. They had a tiny population and an enormous church. And so with that, they built the church that is now inside with a bit of the original church and built it up against the original bell tower, and it's a thatch roof church. So this is an example not of Henry VIII's destruction of the churches, but more of an example of building more than you can afford. I hope you enjoyed this tour of this church with me, and I'll see you next time.